software for the brain.
What is the most precious resource in your life? Well, if you're like I am, your most precious resource is time. And according to all the recent studies that have been done lately, adults in America and Canada and other countries value time ahead of money in almost every instance. Now, as a result of what we've talked about in our previous sessions, with the fact that if you change your internal world, you change your external world, one of the things that begins to well up inside of you is impatience. If you believe that if you do change your internal programming, your external world will change to conform with it, then you're probably in a hurry to change that internal programming. And in this session, we're going to talk about how you can bring about rapid and permanent internal programming change. We call this session software for the brain. Now, I don't know a lot about computers, but I do know this. I do know that a computer has a certain amount of utility as a piece of hardware, but what makes a computer work are the programs that you run in it. And the more sophisticated and complex and productive the programs, the more valuable is the computer. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take the things that we talked about in terms of mental programming, visualization, and affirmation, and so on, and we're going to combine them into a series of techniques that you can use to multiply or to speed up the process at which your new thoughts and ideas are accepted by your subconscious mind and then go to work and attract them into your reality. And the first technique we're going to talk about is what I call written programming technique. It's one of the simplest of all, and yet it is so powerful that it's almost scary. Again, I've said this to many audiences, but I'll say it to you, is that if you just practice this one technique, it will be worth 10 times the time and price of this program. If it's all you learn is this one technique, it will have an astonishing difference on your results. When I first learned about this and applied it some years ago, I couldn't believe how effective it was. And all it requires to use is discipline plus one of these. Now, this is what I use. It's a spiral notebook. It costs here $1.99, Walgreens Drugs. All it has is lined pages. And what you do is you use this to write and rewrite your goals. It's very simple. You buy one for $1.99 and you use this as the basis of written programming technique. Let me explain to you how it works. Written programming technique is based on the fact that we learn or take in information three ways. We take in information auditorily. In other words, we hear the information or we speak the information. We take it in visually. We see the information, and we take it in kinesthetically as we feel the information. Now, any one of these is a good way of learning, or if you like, bringing in information to the unconscious mind. However, the more of them you can combine simultaneously, along with some of the other mental principles and programming techniques that we've talked about, the more rapidly the information is accepted. Sometimes, if you combine information in the right way, it's accepted instantaneously as a permanent change in your unconscious programming. Written programming technique is based on this, as are some of the other programming techniques which we'll talk about in the next few minutes. Written programming technique is based on the fact that when you write something down, it requires total concentration, law of concentration. You cannot write accurately and correctly and think of anything else at the same time. So writing requires concentration. It also requires intensity. It also requires visual, because you can't write without looking. And when you do write, you have a tendency to what is called sub-vocalize. In other words, you say the words to yourself as you're writing. So even though you can't hear them with a conscious ear, you hear them internally. And kinesthetically, you move and you feel. It requires tremendous mental, emotional, and physical energy to write. So written programming technique simply says this, is that every single morning, without fail, you rewrite your major goals. After you've done your reading, you rewrite your major goals. Now, this whole process, by the way, can take about 2 minutes, maybe 5. You may get to the point, as I do, where you'll write 10, 20, 30, sometimes even an hour. But you just rewrite your major goals as positive, present tense, personal affirmations. In other words, your goals could be, I earn X number of dollars per month. I weigh X number of pounds. I am outstanding in my field. I do this. I achieve. I accomplish. I choose, and so on. Whatever you want to be, have, or do, you just write it out in a series of affirmations, one at a time. Now, you'll find, and we'll talk about goal setting later on, you'll find that as you write your goals over and over again, an interesting thing will happen, is that your more important goals will tend to be rewritten first, and they'll tend to become clarified and to become sharper and more distinct. And every single time you rewrite your major goals, you are driving them, you are impressing them deeper into the subconscious, which leads to the guarantee that they will be expressed in your reality. Every time you rewrite your major goals, you're programming them into your subconscious, and you're setting them as a directional mechanism, the same way you would set the directional mechanism on a guided missile, so that it will move you unerringly in the direction of accomplishing it. Number 2 is close your eyes after you've rewritten your goals. Close your eyes and visualize your major goal or goals of the day as accomplished. Visualize them as a reality. What would they look like? Now, a very valuable thing to do, by the way, is cut out clippings from magazines and books and put them in your notebook so that you can actually look at a picture. Do you want to own a brand new car or a beautiful house or something like that? Well, then get a picture of it and make a very clear picture so when you write out the goal, you can look at the picture and then close your eyes and feed that picture into your subconscious mind. And then the third part, which is most important, is imagine the feeling of pleasure you would have. Imagine the feeling of pleasure you would have if you already owned it. Just imagine that it is already a reality. The way that you imagine that it's a reality is imagine that you are on a path toward your goal, and your goal is on a path toward you, and that there is a predestined time when you are ready and it's ready, when everything is ready, that you and the goal will meet. And that you cannot speed up the time. You can't make it go faster and you can't make it go slower. But what you can do is continually repeat the picture and the feeling and the description over and over again, and at exactly the right time and place, it will meet. Someday you'll probably write me a letter and you'll tell me how remarkably this has worked in your life, because it's worked remarkably in my life and the life of many other people. Now, the second point, and before we go on with this, let me give you a key point. It's called the law of relaxation. The law of relaxation is one of the most important mental laws. The law of relaxation simply says this, that in the physical world, if you want to drive a nail, the harder you hit it, the more physical effort or energy you put behind it, the faster you accomplish something in the physical world. If you want to drive a car faster, you step on the gas, which causes the engine to work harder and propels it forward. However, in the mental realm, it's exactly the opposite. The law of relaxation says that in all mental working, effort defeats itself. In all mental working, effort defeats itself. What does this mean? It means that the harder you don't try, the better it works. Now, it's interesting. I'll give you a perfect example. Relationships. You will notice that in any relationship of yours that works, the harder you try to make a relationship work, the more difficult it is. Because a relationship is basically a meeting of minds. And whenever you just relax and let the relationship flow, the relationship unfolds exactly the way it should. If ever you try to speed something up or slow it down out of its own time, you create a crisis. You create tension, stress, and anxiety. So anything that has to do with mental working, anything that has to do with minds, and all interactions between people have to do with minds, anything that has to do with goals and dreams and plans requires that you just relax and let it unfold. That's why we say, close your eyes, visualize, imagine the feeling, and just relax without making any effort. And the more relaxed you are, the more rapidly the idea is accepted by the subconscious mind. Now, the next technique is what is called the quick affirmation technique, or quick programming technique. Quick programming technique is used specifically before any non-recurring event of importance. Before any non-recurring. That means an event that happens only once. For instance, if you're going to be in a sports event, or if you're going to go into an interview for a job or a raise, or if you're going to make a sales presentation. By the way, all top salespeople use this quick programming technique. It's very, very powerful. What it does is it has a temporary effect, but it sets you up psychologically, physically, mentally. It programs your self-concept and your subconscious to give you the words and actions and behaviors that are perfectly appropriate to the situation. All athletes use this, as we'll talk about in a second. Now, how do you use quick programming technique? Well, let us say that you have a talk coming up. A good friend of mine just gave a very important talk to 2,500 people. And he was very tense and worried about it. I said, look, this is all you have to do is each time you think about this talk that's coming up, just close your eyes and use this technique and just think like this. First of all, visualize the perfect outcome.